This conference will now be recorded.
Wait a couple more minutes, everybody.
I didn't even know I was talking.
Well, let's go ahead and get started, everybody. If that's okay. I want to call the meeting to order. I think everybody on here knows or recognizes everybody's names, so we can kind of do our own introductions there, I guess. But if I could get approval of the meeting minutes from last month, motion to approve.
Tim, I noticed something on the notes for on here for the Shoal Creek update from KCPD. It looks like somebody copied and pasted the at least part of the notes from the October meeting and carried them over just by some of the dates that are referenced on there.
Okay. I think Ed can take care of getting that corrected.
Yeah.
Anything anyone else sees? I get a motion to approve them after we make the corrections, which Officer Jones mentioned. Anyone?
I'll motion to approve.
There's a second?
Second.
Thank you, Karen. All righty. Most of the meeting minutes have been approved after we make those corrections. Officer Jones, you're up. KCPD is the next thing on our meeting agenda, the update.
Yeah. First of all, do we have a Pav or Officer Lenz, or are you guys on? All right. Okay. All right. I'll just go ahead and start with the key stuff first. Had a little bit of excitement over on the Shoal Creek side earlier in the week. The main thing was we ended up having what we call an Operation Barricade. The story behind it was it stemmed from a kidnapping in Independence. The victims were here to a house on Campbell. Somehow, I'm not quite clear how they got out. Anyhow, we had information the suspect was inside the residence. tried making contact. Suspect wasn't going to come out, so we called one of our operational. We were able to get negotiators on the phone with him. He peacefully. So that was Monday night. So that was what a little bit of that activity was about. Right now, that's still independent, still working, and nobody was hurt. That was the most important thing out of all of this. Let's see. I'll go ahead and talk about if some of you look on crimereports.com, where it's called cityprotect.com. You'll see that we reported a dead body call over there in the same neighborhood on the same night. The only reason it was classified as a suspicious death was it was a younger victim with no known medical problems. So it's usually when we have instances like that, we always work it, from a perspective that there might be foul play or something along those lines. Doesn't appear that was the case, but if some of you got on there and saw that, that was the story behind it. Let's see a couple of assaults that we've seen. The main one that just kind of stuck out to me was just kind of shows you how, where people's minds might be right now is you see an aggravated assault that occurred on the 24th of November up on North Oak. Basically, a gentleman went into the store without his mask on. Store clerk explained to him he needed to have it on. The suspect of the assault didn't agree, so he trumped him up by grabbing a thing of hand sanitizer and throwing it at the store clerk. There were no injuries on that. We had a victim reported that he was shot on the 17th of November. Said that he was shot at while driving through the neighborhood. Getting out there, came across some evidence that the victim may have been involved in a couple other things that they weren't so forward about. So it's one of those things where it's investigation still has that. Yeah, let's see. The last big thing as far as violent crime goes. On the 21st, we had it was over on the North Patrol side, 3600 block of North Main. Victim picked up an overnight guest from another part of the city. Come morning, the victim wasn't getting ready to leave fast enough to take the suspect back to where they needed to go. So the victim acquired the victim's car keys and cell phone at knife point. Investigations is still working on that one as well. And then I'll just go ahead and just touch on property crimes real briefly. Same thing. We're seeing, property crimes are staying about the same. What I'm coming across is our apartment complexes are getting hit really hard right now with theft from autos. Still the same thing. Cars that are left unsecure, and there was at least one that I came across where a high dollar electronics item was left out in the open in the backseat of the car. Of course, they broke into that. We are really seeing right now is catalysts are pretty hot right now. What we're seeing primarily, they're taking the catalytic converters off of Ford F-Series trucks, anything that's a Honda, and some Jeeps. I couldn't tell you exactly what models, but there are certain Jeeps. There's just certain Jeeps that they're taking them also. And it's one of those deals where it's, they got to and say, they can be under the car, have it sawed off, back out of there in under 2 minutes. So it's, especially if they're doing it late at night, it takes at least before someone would even hear the sawing half the time. And then, of course, lastly, our license plates are kind of, becoming a little bit of a hot commodity. So that's pretty much about it on that end. Does anybody have any questions? All right, and then real quick, I'll go go ahead and mention the neighborhood advisory meeting next Wednesday at 2:00. Officer Lenz and I are scheduled to do a encore presentation of the holiday safety tips presentation that we did earlier in the month. So available if you want to if it's something you'd like to see again, we'd love to have you.
All Great. Thank you, Officer Jones. I do have a question or an observation. in the last month, we've seen an awful lot of overnight people staying at the Anita Gorman Fountain. They basically camp out on the benches on the south side. And I know they're there all night because I'll go up there about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. They're just still there. Is there anything we can do about that? I mean, that's a park, and I didn't think, people were supposed to be able to stay in parks all night long.
No, they're not. There's actually an ordinance against that. That's thanks for bringing that to our attention. I'll send this on to our our overnight officers and have them start, ask them to start giving the extra attention on that. And then I'll tell you, it's this is something that has come up. Now, hold on, let me put my earpiece back in here real quick. This is something that has come up. People, we're observing what appears to be transients in the area, and I don't know that the numbers have necessarily gone up per se, but some of you may have heard this already. But we got a couple different factors we're working on. First of all, our homeless shelters are at they're running right at about 30% right now because of COVID. So that's having a little bit of an impact on it all. And then also, I think many of you know, it's been in the news and everything else. The limited number of jail spaces that we have as of right now available to us. And I'm not saying that we warehouse our criminals by any means, but at any given time, a certain number of our transient population would probably, would be serving some sort of a city jail sentence for, one thing or another. I mean, that's just facts. And, without that, that also plays a little bit of what appears to be an increase. So it's not that the transient populations have increased. It's more of we just don't have there's not as many available resources to have them off the streets from time to time. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay. Thank you, Officer Jones. I do have one other observation as well. I just thought of this past week, on 3 different days, we've had a group of people on North Oak and Vivian representing a church out of Oklahoma collecting monies. And these guys, there's like 3 or 4 on each corner, and they are just in and out of the cars, walking all through the lanes. They are not shy at all about coming up to the windows, three cars down in the middle lane or whatever. So it was my understanding that as long as they're on the island or the curb, there's nothing the officers can do. But there is something we can, if you observe that they're in the lanes, that they can be asked to move. Is that correct?
You're 100% correct, and that's why I stopped up there at least once. Oh God, what was it? May have even been earlier this week, maybe Monday. Everything runs together. I personally stopped up there myself and said, "Hey, here's the deal. I know you're from out of town. Here's our ordinance. Get it. Basically, stay out of the street. This is my warning to you." I didn't look up to see if we got any more calls on it. I'm confident that we did, but I hadn't seen them out there in the past few days.
The last 2 days they haven't been there.
Okay, maybe they heeded my warning. I don't know. Hopefully.
There was a group at Antioch and Vivian too. They didn't look as organized as that group at North Oak and Vivian did, but they also were in and out of traffic and coming up to your windows, and they were on all 4 corners.
Yeah, it's usually sometimes it's when we have groups that come in, and we know they're from out of town, usually they'll one of 2 things. They'll either start migrating from major intersection to major intersection, or they'll have the van that literally just comes and drops them off. They'll drop off the 4 at one intersection, then they'll go down the next one, and they'll drop some more folks off. And as far as the the appearance of organization, whatever the case may be, the varying degrees of organization, it might just be, hey, this group just works well together, this group doesn't work so well together. But I would say I think they were part of the same group, because I think I do remember seeing them out there earlier in the week too, or last week.
Okay, well, thank you for reaching out and taking care of that for us, Officer Jones. I appreciate it. I know the whole neighborhood does.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions for Officer Jones?
Officer Jones, this is Deb Herman.
Hey, Deb.
I know you weren't on the Vivian Road call the other day. Richard, what am I trying to say? Bill was. But there's a common theme around the homeless, the panhandlers, the whatever. Also appears at the very same time we're having an increased amount of vandalism. I know that you're meeting with some of those folks Tuesday.
Yes.
But I really wonder if we need to kind of have some kind of coordinated meeting or response to this. I know you've been limited on what you can do by city ordinance, but this appears to be getting to be a much bigger issue. Also hearing or wondering, conjecturing, if it's tied together with the bus stops.
Well, Deb, I'm glad you brought that up. So we are meeting with Curry Management on Tuesday in regards to the Antioch Annex property overall, at Antioch and Inglewood and Antioch. And we're, it's going to be one of those deals where you're right, Deb. I mean, I think we're all pretty limited on what we can do by city ordinance. So it's going to be one of those where we're going to have to put it on the property owners. Responsibility of the property owners, and that's going to be in terms of passing and not just not following through with it, but also I'm kind of introducing some going to introduce some tactics that some folks might feel that are might be a little might be sensitive, but here's the deal: we got to do something to get the message across. And what we're finding is when we go on these properties, we go into these transient camps, it's the same. They've been told you can't be here. I mean, all we're doing is shuffling them around. We've offered the resources. We've done, we've done everything we can to say, hey, here's some opportunities for you to get off the streets, get out of the situation. We're to the point now to where it's like, when we go out there, we trespass them, we get them to move on. They can't always take all their property, and then once we come back around, they're using the same property that they were using the last time. So we're gonna encourage the management companies to follow up with the trespassing by any property that's left there. They are within their legal rights to dispose of it. And we're gonna start encouraging things like that, because it's again, I know it comes across a little bit insensitive, but we've handled a lot of this with kid gloves for a little too long, and we have to get the message across. At some point, we got to start taking our neighborhoods and our business corridors back.
Absolutely.
Hello, everybody. This is Officer Keeney.
Hey, Bill.
Hey,
Hello,
I'm down here at North Oak right now, and 43rd. I've driven up and down the corridor, and also in and out of the parks and what have you. And interestingly enough, Deb, you just got done asking about the bus stops. When I got up to Vivian and saw the panhandlings at North Oak and Vivian, I sat and watched for a while. And to answer your question, Deb, yeah, I did watch 3 of the panhandlers get on the bus and leave the area. And like I told you, Deb, yesterday at our Vivian meeting, that I would also be traveling the different corridors on my way to my early morning run to bring the mail, what have you, down to the headquarters. And again, I did observe some of the people that were panhandling at Vivian and Antioch, and then one down here at Briarcliff or 43rd, that is, and North Oak or what have you. I did see them come off the bus there as well. And then this afternoon, I saw them down at Vivian and North Oak. Now, one of the things that we have to look at is where are they getting the bus passes? If they are they just getting enough change to pay for their bus passes? Where are they coming to and from? And so those are the questions that, can be addressed as well. I think with the bus company, I like the idea, especially at the Vivian corridor, of the camera idea. I like that from yesterday, Deb. But that's what I observed so far today.
Well, just for everyone's information, and I'm sorry if I sound a little cranky, but we go through election season and we hear a whole lot of people tell us that they're really Northlanders at heart, that they love to eat it in a tub and yada, yada, yada. Our Northland Council people supported an ordinance that would have strengthened the police department's ability to control this. Unfortunately, the Northland doesn't have enough votes to carry the day. So this is an issue And if you talk to current council people or prospective council people, you might make sure that they know it's important to you.
I was on a virtual meeting,
Shut up.
parked off on the side of the road, still on the meeting.
Hey, Deb, just
Hey,
to
this is
piggyback
Sean.
a little
This is
bit
Sean with
on,
the ATA. Let me know if there's something that we can do in terms of looking at a specific location where there have been some issues. Probably available to work with you on if some sort of bus stop relocation that would make sense or something like that. Let us know. Buses are currently free to ride, so there's no pass or fare needed at this point for the foreseeable future. So just to verify that point as well.
Does ATA ever install cameras? Or I guess I would ask.
We have cameras at some of our newer transit centers. So like at 12th and Charlotte, our new East Village Transit Center, for example, 75th and Prospect. So some of our newer, larger transit center locations do have cameras. Now at a typical bus stop, no, not really.
Why do they particularly come to the Northland? Is it more lucrative? Do people give them more money?
I'd like that, ma'am, Miss Tucker. I'll put it like this: transients come to the Northland to solicit the same reasons why we all want to live in the Northland and raise our families in the Northland. People are generous, and they feel and people feel safe. When we talk to these transients, they tell us the same things. We make more money at these intersections than we do anywhere else, and nobody messes with us in terms of territory or anything like that. Once you start getting down into the, towards the inner city a little, you'll have, turf disputes sometimes. And they don't really have those issues here. So it's, in a sense, they're doing it. They're up here for the same reasons we choose to live up here.
Okay. Well, I thought the well would run dry after a while, but they've been up there for a long time, so the well's not running dry.
No, it isn't.
And when I was sitting up here, because again, I'm still sitting here on North Oak and I'm looking down the corridor. I wish I was on video so you can see where I'm at. But as I was sitting here and I was watching and observing, yes, the Northlanders are giving them money. I mean, I'm watching them stop and roll down their windows and give them money. Now, once they get out onto the street, I can actually write them a ticket for, impeding the flow of traffic. But these guys are pretty intelligent. They're staying right on the median. They're waiting for people to come up to them and reach out to them and hand it to them. They're not even stepping in the street. And so the way our ordinances are written, it really doesn't do me any good. But to answer your question, yeah, I agree with Rick, 100% everything that Rick just said.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
this is Tammy. Can I add something that maybe I shouldn't?
Go ahead.
We are hearing, I don't know, I think it's just because I've had a week where I've heard this from numerous things. I don't know if it's just blowback because the Northland's gotten kind of organized and is able to get money and to get projects through groups like NNI and other things. But I just keep hearing that we don't need anything up here, that the city council, some of the council members kind of stand in the way of like, one instance is we had our council people were going to shift some money to North Kansas City schools, and other council members blocked that because they didn't think that north of the river we need anything. I was involved in a meeting yesterday where the idea of urban sprawl, they applied to all of north of the river. I mean, and then I was in another meeting today where they were talking about the GO bonds and how the Northland really hasn't fared very well. Are we starting to be a product of our own success? I mean, I just, it's discouraging to have worked on a lot of these issues for so many years, and I feel like we're going backwards now to where we're getting cut out of things again.
I think it's,
or is it just me?
I recognize the problem, but I think it's the opposite. Northlanders became lethargic, apathetic a little bit, not stomping around as much as we did for a while. I know you and I were both much younger, but the days of Manuel
Hey, not
Cleaver
that much.
and Bonnie Sue Cooper threatened to de-annex the Northland, and we had a lot of people really upset. And before you knew it, all of a sudden we had several appointments. We were assured appointments in this term, and I think I know you've gotten a nice appointment, but we have very few other appointments. The Northland needs to get upset about it.
Well, and I hate to go back to those days, but I kind of starting to agree with you in the fact that it just, I've been kind of really amazed and disappointed lately that just the viewpoints of folks towards the Northland and even far south. I mean, it's like, I don't know. Sorry, it's been a week.
Now, the difference is, and we're getting way off topic, but the difference is, I think first, second, and fourth are the only donor districts. And I don't think any of us are asking for equal, but I do think we're asking for equity. Enough said, I'll shut up.
Me too.
Thank you, Tammy. Actually, at last year's budget meeting, at the one that was down at Swope Park, I brought up the fact that of the 5-year GEO bond plan, that only 23% of the dollars were coming to the Northland. 23% of the next 5-year plan was going to come to the Northland. And I basically told them, I said, that's not what we voted for. I expected it to be more equal. We have half the land mass. We have as many projects, if not more, up north that need to be attended to or done. And, of course, our Northland representatives were clapping and, saying stuff, but I didn't get anywhere else with anyone else. And of course, nothing's been done. So we just got to keep hammering away is all I can say. Okay. Well, next on the agenda is my good buddy, Sean Straight. I know we talked a little bit already, but let's get the update from the Kansas City ATA man. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. It's been a while since I've been with this group, so it's good to see everyone, although remotely at this point. But I can give kind of a very quick kind of general update and then get into a few kind of North Oak more specific things. So we, of course, have been, like many people, kind of hit pretty hard with the pandemic. We've had to reduce our service a number of times over the course of the year. Most recently, because of just the sheer number of bus drivers that we have in quarantine, just not able to operate our normal service. We just don't have enough drivers to do it. Also, some of our maintenance staff and things like that. So we've had to cut service a number of times throughout the course of the year. Most recently, about 2 weeks ago, and then we have another round of temporary reductions coming up next week. So there's been a pretty big impact there. We have a number of COVID-related policies and procedures that are in place at this point. Of course, masks are required on the bus. Backdoor boarding, just to reduce the amount of interaction with our drivers and passengers. We're limiting the capacity on the bus just to facilitate a little more distancing than what would normally be possible on a bus. We're zero fare. That's part of a safety strategy, again, to limit the amount of interaction that a driver has to have with riders, and also people touching the fare box and all those sorts of things as well. And we're doing some messaging where we really want people to just use buses for essential trips only right now. So for those that were more using our services for more social or recreational purposes, in normal times, we absolutely love that. We always encourage people to ride. We're always out there trying to get more ridership. But right now, we're encouraging those people to maybe pursue other means so that those people that have essential jobs and services to get to are able to do so in a safe manner. So that's kind of the COVID situation and our situation this year at the ATA in terms of our services. Now, I will say because of the pandemic and some kind of limited staff that we've had, our planning work has not really progressed too much this year, because my job in particular has had to focus a lot more on kind of operations type duties and less on kind of the planning side of things, unfortunately, just during this time. I do have a couple of things to report on, though, more on the planning side, although most of our work has not progressed too much. We have done a few things. So this group will recall we had our North Oak Transit Planning Study, transit improvement study that was finished 2019, calls for significant amount of service improvement, expansion on the corridor, upgrading service on most of the corridor to 15 minutes frequency, which is a high frequency transit service that would put it on par with some of our max routes in other parts of the city, as well as upgrading certain bus stops to more of a transit station type concept you can see in our max routes, and a number of other upgrades up and down the corridor to facilitate better access to our bus stops. So that plan was completed last year, partly based on the input of this group specifically, and we appreciate your involvement in that, and a number of other public engagements we held around the Northland at that time. So I am happy to report, while that study in itself and the dollar figure in that study is still a kind of a longer term opportunity, we were successful in our recent round of grant requests through the Mid-America Regional Council. They facilitate the surface transportation program funding throughout the region. And one of our projects was a regional transit corridor improvement project, of which North Oak is part of a total of 4 corridors in KCMO that we're in line to receive about $2 million to split between those 4 corridors for a number of what we call kind of pre-bus rapid transit level of improvement. So this unfortunately isn't nearly enough to get routes up to a bus rapid transit level of infrastructure, but it can allow for a number of upgrading bus stops, adding facilities to bus stops, even some signal priority and traffic signal improvements to improve not just our operations, but traffic flow in general. Also looking at fiber connections and areas that we can put more technology at our bus stops, electronic signage to let people know when the next bus is going to be and that sort of thing. So this is funding that we don't actually get for a few years. With the way Mark does their process, it's either 2023 or 24, so it's a few years away. But planning and engineering of those sorts of projects will begin here in the next year or so. So that is a kind of a tangible amount of funding and some improvement that we'll be able to facilitate on the corridor the coming year. Really, our biggest challenge with moving forward with the type of service envisioned in that plan is really the operating side of things. And North Oak is similar to a handful of other corridors that we see a lot of potential for in upgrading our service over time. There's sort of a chicken and egg scenario where we're not eligible for certain types of federal funding because ridership and service levels don't quite meet the levels required for some of the FTA Small Start program and things like that. You can't really achieve that ridership until you can upgrade the amount of service on the corridor. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. So what we're doing at ATA in coordination with Mark is we're kind of taking a step back and looking at our sources of operating funding and essentially trying to put a strategy together of how we can look at some more innovative ways of being able to fund our projects, and specifically more on the operating side, since that tends to be a more difficult source. So looking at private sources of funding, state funding. The state of Missouri funds public transit way less than the vast majority of other states do, and looking at some opportunities there so we can get service. We can have enough buses operating on these corridors, such as North Oak, to where we can improve the ridership and better be able to access funding for infrastructure improvements. So that's kind of where we are at this point. The other project I'll quickly mention is that our system redesign, which is called Ride Casey Next, which is a kind of a system-wide restructuring of our network. This is a project that's been in progress for a couple of years now. We had to delay it about 6 or 9 months because of the pandemic, but we've recently kind of picked that back up. We have a revised plan out there, ridecaseynext.org. We've had a series of virtual meetings over the past few weeks. I believe yesterday was our last one of those. We got some good feedback. We'll be making some adjustments based on that. We'll be back out in the spring with some specific draft schedules and some more information about the specifics of that plan, with the idea of implementing that in the summer of 2021. So that is the plan that we have out there that we encourage everyone to take a look at and give us some feedback on. I think that's all I had. Open to any questions or comments at this point.
I've got a couple of questions, please.
Yep.
Will the plans that you have along North Oak include increased security and cameras? And can we get cameras now at Vivian and North Oak?
That could definitely be part of it. So yeah, we've not been at this point, we haven't had to be very specific about certain locations and technologies, but that would be within kind of the framework of what we applied for. So that could certainly be an option.
Well, I would hope we could have cameras real quick. And one of the things Officer Jones and Officer Keeney neglected to mention, although they've talked to us about it, and I don't think they'll mind me bringing it up, another reason people say they go north of the river, the folks do, is because they know what our response times are. As far as from police. So chicken and an egg, we've got that same issue, but we need the security before we need the service. Officer Jones, I saw you unmuted. You want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say that you do bring up a very good point. That's another thing that people come up north for also is our response times. But also they come up, and this leans more towards the property crimes aspect of it, and sometimes the two are going to go hand in hand in regards to our transits and our solicitors. We had somebody that we had picked up in a stolen auto. Was a stolen auto that was I believe they were doing theft from autos in the area as well. From Jackson County, so nowhere around. But when the detective was talking to this girl, one of the things he asked her was, why do you come north of the river? And she said, well, everybody knows that all the rich people live up here. They got a lot of money. They have things, and they don't lock their stuff up. Well, she didn't quite say it like that, but that was the gist of it. So, it's I'm guilty of it myself. You guys have heard me say numerous times. I'm a little, I have my moments too, but we really want to do a little bit better at times in what we're doing as far as being a little bit more conscientious of our situational awareness and what we're doing with our property. So I'll just kind of leave it at that, and I'll hand it back over to you, Deb.
I'd like to put some 10 cents on this, if it's okay.
Sure.
Sean, on our cameras that are down south of the river, who has access? And those cameras, is there a command post that is monitoring the cameras live?
Yeah, so Hugh Mills is our head of security. I can't answer that for sure. I'd have to touch base with him. I mean, they certainly have access to the video in terms of live monitoring of it. I'm not sure that that's happening in real time in most cases.
Okay. And then I know that we have officers that are assigned to him as well. Well, not to him, but assist with it. So my next question, or my next suggestion, or however way you want to take it, is, has it been considered kind of following some of the European models where not only is there a camera, but there's an audio system so that the security over the metro or the bus system can actually inform the individuals at the bus stop that they are being watched, that they have been loitering too long, and that they need to move on. And if they do not, they can be ticketed and law enforcement will be contacted.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, when we look at putting together our improvement project on North Oak with the money I talked about, that could be part of the discussion for sure.
And part of that discussion, Sean, we could use us in the Northland as a pilot program to see if it's got its bang for its buck, because I have no problem, neither does Officer Jones, the CIOs up here, to help with that monitoring of the systems and seeing how it works, making sure that we're seeing the reduction, because a lot of things that we see up here in the Northland are identical what's going on throughout the whole city. The CIOs all talk constantly, and I'm hearing the exact same things throughout the whole city. But we would love, and I think Deb would too, for us in the Northland to be that pilot program as we revitalize this North Oak corridor.
Yeah, appreciate the comments, and of course we do have cameras on our buses. Now, those are really more focused on the activity that's occurring on the bus and interactions with the driver. We have a camera that kind of points at the door of the bus when someone's boarding. And so that's helped us catch all sorts of incidents over the years. But in terms of more cameras, more places, certainly open to work with the police department to figure out how best to do that.
And John, like I was saying, it would be a camera audio system that would be at a bus stop, like you were talking about, a major stop area where we've, we know we have a lot of ridership. And then that way we can go ahead and address them live. I mean, we can get on that audio and say, like I told you, we need to move along. We already have ordinances in place that they're not to stay at the bus stop for a long period of times. But by using us as a Northland as an actual pilot, it's exactly what Deb is saying. If we already know that we do not have the amount of manpower north of the river as comparatively south of the river, and we already know that the response time north of the river, it does differentiate compared to south of the river, then by utilizing us here north of the river is going to give you more accurate data that shows that audio and video system where they could be told to move along or move out of that area, lets them know that they are being watched. And by us responding out there and then talking to those individuals on a call through the ATA, it then enforces it even more so for those individuals. So just food for thought.
Appreciate
Hey,
it. Thank
Sean,
you.
this is Tammy Henderson. Would you tell Hugh Mills that Tammy Henderson and Deb Herman will be on his doorstep if he doesn't do what we want him to? It would be a huge blast from his past.
Sure, he'll be happy to hear
He'd want to hear from.
I'll let him know.
Yeah.
Any other questions or thoughts for Sean? Well, I do. Of that $2 million grant, is that going to be split equally, as far as you can see, to $500,000 for each corridor?
The idea is that's roughly the case. Again, we haven't quite gotten into the level of detail of specific locations and types of projects. We've left it very open to give ourselves some flexibility. A few years from now, when we actually get the money, that we can kind of have some flexibility as to how to use it. But the idea is that it will be roughly equally. Now, will it be to the dollar? Probably not. But the idea is that we have 4 corridors that we want to make some basic improvements to. Again, it's not a huge amount of money that allows like a max project or anything like that, but some basic infrastructure, technology upgrades, and we want to do all 4 of them as equal as possible. So I work with this group once we have some more detail on that and kind of nail that down.
Considering the deficit of Northland, go ahead, Tim.
I was going to say, well, our group would want to be a part of those decisions that are being made,
sure.
As far as public input to it. Because, like I said, as we know up here, and Officer Keeney, wonderful points you brought up, those are the type of things that might be more important to us than another corridor might want. So, and we would like to have the input for those dollars when they come through.
Absolutely. I will definitely,
Okay.
You guys are the experts on the corridor more than I am. I definitely want to hear those things.
Thanks, Sean.
And considering the deficit in service in the Northland, I won't be satisfied with 50% of it. I mean, I understand they count readers or ridership and all of that as part of where the need is, but I've made this argument to everybody at ATA for years. That model works if you're a private business. You can base your service along where the demand is, but you're being funded with public dollars, and 90-some% of those dollars come from Kansas City, and in Kansas City, a majority of them come from the Northland. And we have people, and I think Tammy will agree with me on this, it makes me sick that our kids that go to Winnetonka or any of our high schools can qualify for the A+ program, work real hard, and they can take advantage of it as soon as they buy a car, because there's no way to get there.
So our Ride KC Next plan has a significant expansion of flex service in the Northland that would provide all-day service to areas that don't currently have it, as far east as the Gracemore neighborhood, Worlds of Fun area. So we will be in our plan that I mentioned, the Ride KC Next, expanding our flex service to provide better coverage. If you're in part of that area now, all you have is a fixed route that runs once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and right now it's not really running at all because of COVID. But our plan is to put all day a flexible zone in that area to give people all day access. So that's part of the plan.
And Sean, I apologize. I don't mean to give you a bad time, but some of us have sat in these meetings for 30 or 35 years, and we keep hearing we have plans. Northland, we have plans, but we haven't seen a whole lot of delivery. And I know that's not your fault. I don't question your sincerity. But Tammy's grouchy. I'm not.
Yeah, I mean that plan was on track to be implemented in October 2020, but we had to push it back about 9 months, and so now we're looking at July 2021.
You are appreciated, and I'm going to
Yeah.
stay grumpy.
Thanks, Deb. I appreciate it.
Sean, I have one other question. I know I'm dominating a lot with questions, but I'm a Northlander, so I'm kind of concerned about certain things. And Officer Jones brought up a good point one time when we were out doing our rounds and doing our patrols. You know, we've got a free bus program, which I love. I think it's great. It's a terrific idea. But what we're worried about is the abuse of that system. And not only the abuse of that system, but as we've been talking about, the movement of individuals that are utilizing that bus system, the movement to be able to go out and do the things that we've been discussing. And I don't know, I'm not saying to go back to a paid fare. That's not what I'm saying. But why couldn't there been to where every individual could have applied for some kind of card, a swiping card, that when they got onto a bus, they just swipe it and it just gets them on there. And then if they abuse that system, that card then gets flagged and it gets deactivated. And whoever has that account, there's a suspension put on it for whatever amount of time. It just feels that there is no security, and we rely upon trespassing and trespassers and et ceteras. And all they do, and you can talk to your KCATA officers, all they do is they say, oh, they know me on this route, but they don't know me on this route. And they just go to a different route. And so what we see is just them, it's just relocate them to different routes. And I know that's probably above your pay grade or what have you, but it's just a food for thought. And Officer Jones had came up with that idea, and I thought, man, that's a brilliant idea.
It is. Maybe we end up with something like that. So, zero fare has been a goal of ours a bit now, as well as the city, and that remains the case. Right now, the main reason that we're doing it is just to limit the interaction. Well, A, to make it easier for people to get where they need to go during the pandemic, and B, just to limit the amount of interaction between people on the vehicle. So we might end up with some sort of application card-based system in the longer term. One downside to that is still having to maintain fare boxes that are really, really expensive. And one of the benefits of zero fare is not having to have all that expensive infrastructure on the vehicles that we could use for other things. But not to say we couldn't do it. I think it's a good idea. I think it has a lot of benefits, and we might end up doing something like that. But there are some pros and cons with that. We'll have to look. The security concerns are noted, and we're of course aware of a lot of that already through Hugh. We know he spends a lot of his time kind of dealing with that. We're also sort of, in some respects, using this as a bit of a pilot learning phase. And what are the impacts? What are the issues? And post-pandemic gives us a better idea of what we want to do permanently moving forward. If it's enough of an issue, and that outweighs the benefits of not having fare on the bus, then that tells us the direction we need to go permanently. So we're learning a lot during this time.
Okay, does anyone else have any thoughts or concerns or questions for Sean? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much, Sean. Appreciate your time as always, and we'll invite you back.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Everyone take care.
All right, moving on.
Happy holidays, Sean.
To you as well. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Thanks, everyone.
Any other business that anyone would like to bring up or talk about or mention in our corridor? Nobody? All righty. Nothing else. We stand adjourned.
Have a Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Be
Merry
safe.
Christmas.
Be safe and have blessings.
Thanks
everyone.
everyone else.